I
that?
would say be you. Be fearlessly, authentically you. And that means not caring about what certain people will think about you as your authentic self, or what you may miss out on if you're you, or like just be fearlessly, authentically you. I'm here as an example. I've been there. I've been something that I wasn't, to try and fit in, to try and, earn people's love. And what I realize is at the moment that I decided to just be me, everything in my life shifted. I found the love of my life. I was able to tap into my highest potential. I was able to find joy and fulfillment in my life. So let me, spare you the time and tell you right now, like, just be you. And if you don't know who that is, it's time to get on and read this book, and let me help you find out who that really is. But what makes you feel alive? What matters most? You bring all of who you are into this life, and you will set yourself up to truly have the life that you deserve.
Welcome my guest, Siri Lindley. Siri went from living in the depths of self-doubt to winning big and living fearlessly. Siri is an author, keynote speaker, animal advocate, cancer survivor, two-time world champion triathlete, and now the world's very best female triathlon coach. From finishing next to last in her first triathlon to becoming the #1 triathlon athlete in the world, Siri has experienced it all. She has dealt with extreme anxiety and OCD while a triathlete student at Brown University. She found ways to overcome her challenges and now looks forward to every moment in her life. She shares the stage with Tony Robbins and is recognized as his 8 most inspirational speakers. Siri proves it's never too late to rewrite your own story and change your thoughts, habits, and behaviors that hold you back. She will help you uncover your own potential, empower you to go after your dreams, and live fearlessly authentic. Now welcoming her newest book, Finding a Way, Taking the Impossible and Making It Possible, where she shares strategies that have turned her life around and explains how to find the gift in every struggle and the beauty and power that lies within our own suffering. Okay, welcome back to another episode on Passion, Love, Pursuit podcast. I have such the honor welcoming on this beautiful, beautiful Siri Lindley that I so admire, so respect. This is the second time she's returning to the show, because when I first had her on, I was just blown away by just your heart, your passion, and your story, and all the wisdom you shared from your journey and what you've learned. And I just can't wait to dive much deeper into the conversation. And I know that your story will I'm sure touch on a lot of it in this episode, but I want everybody to hear everything and all the wisdom she's shared also on her previous episodes. So that will be linked to the show notes. But first, I want to welcome on Siri Lindley.
Thank you, Erica. And I am so thrilled to be here, because the last time I was on your show, we had such an amazing talk, and you are just an extraordinary human being, and your light shines so bright. And I feel blessed to be able to share this time with you. So thank you.
Thank you. It means so much. And I'm so appreciative for, you taking the time to do this, because I know you're very busy. And there's my dog, by the way, for anybody that's on YouTube.
Made me so happy to see his face.
So let's go into this. So one thing I was so excited about that I heard several months ago, and I jumped right on it. I purchased your book, pre-ordered, Finding Your Way, Turning the Impossible to Possible. I had to bring you on the show to talk about your book, because I knew there was going to be more gold and more wisdom I had to extract from you. So first of all, I want to say, so when this episode releases, the book will already be available. So of course, again, in the show notes, grab this book. I've already read it. I finished it last week and I was just blown away. And honestly, what I loved so much about it is there's so many tangible tools that you could actually implement immediately, do the homework that's in the book, and create results in your life and feel empowered. Like, that's what I think this book is. Like, you walk away feeling really empowered. At least I did. And so I'm really excited that at least we could have this conversation about your newest book. So let me go into asking you first, where did you come up with, or where did you first hear that term, finding your way? Was there something that came about in your life that you're like, this is what I need to focus on? Like, I need to create the path.
Yeah. And first of all, thank you for your kind words, Erica. This book, I am so proud of it. We'll get into the why I wrote this book now, but what led to me writing it is super important to me. So I'll share that with you later. But finding a way, the first time I heard that, I was training for triathlon. I was a professional triathlete. I wanted to be the best in the world someday. When I began at 23, I didn't know how to swim. But 8 years later, I actually became a world champion. That's a whole story in itself that I think we talked about in the last podcast. But in the last 2 years as a professional triathlete, I went to a new coach, and his name was Brett Sutton, and he only coached world champions, Olympic medalists. He was very hardcore, and he took me on as an athlete, which was a miracle because he didn't take on people like me. I wasn't good yet. But the training was so it was just ridiculous. It didn't make sense to me. I got there, day one was like an 8-hour training day where I swum like double the distance I ever had before. Every single lap was agonizing. I'll share this story. Have I shared this story before, Erica? Because I won't share it again on this podcast.
No, it's okay. And people are listening to you possibly for the first time. So regardless, share your wisdom, stories, go deep.
Okay. So day one, I show up in Switzerland, and we lived at the top of one of the Swiss Alps in a place called Lausanne, Switzerland. This was about 20 miles down from where we lived down to the swimming pool. So we were told you're going to ride your bike down to the swimming pool for our swim session. I thought, okay, great. This is day one. I get to ride downhill. That's no problem. Get in the pool, and it's one of those moments that we all have at some point where we think, I can't work any harder than I already do. And I thought, going to this coach, I can't work any harder than I already am, but I'm going to be pushed by amazing athletes, and that's where I'll get the gains. Totally wrong, because on this day, this swim, I swam double what I've ever swum in my life. It was harder than anything I'd ever done before. It was a 2.5-hour swim. And at the end of it, I walked outside with my bike, and I turned to one of my training partners and I said, hey, where's Brett? Where's the van? How do we get back home? And she laughed and she looked at me and she said, you ride home, Siri. Like, what do you think? And I was terrified. I it's my first day. I'd never been here before. And she said, listen, go with Jane. Jane sucks. And I thought, oh my God, first of all, that's the meanest thing that I've ever heard. And then I was like, well, where's Jane? Like, I can't wait to meet Jane. So I find Jane and we start riding together. Within 5 minutes, Jane drops me. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, if Jane sucks, like, what am I? And I drag my butt up to the top of the hill. It takes me 2.5 hours. I've never ridden anything so steep in my life. I get to the top, go inside my apartment. I think I'm just going to sleep the rest of my day. This was like the hardest morning ever. 5 minutes later, Brett shows up at the door and says, we're going running. Get your run shoes and get in the van. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't believe this. So we get in the van. He drives us down to the bottom of the mountain, 20 miles down, and tells us to get out, rips a donut in his van, yells at the window, see you at home. So we had to run 20 miles back to where we lived. I'd never run over 10 miles. I was a short course triathlete. And everyone dropped me within the first 400 meters. And I just cried my way to the top of this mountain. Now, first thing I did is I got back and I called my mom and I said, you know what, this just isn't for me. Like, I can't handle it. It was the hardest day of my life. And she said, well, Siri, don't you get it? He was testing you. It's going to all be, easier from here. Next day, same exact thing. The day after, same exact thing, just looked different, like a 3-hour hard time trial on the bike, followed by 10 by a mile on the track. Like, it was brutal. And after 7 days, I couldn't bend my knees. I couldn't bend my arms. And I hobbled to, the pool that was up there, and I found Brett, and I said, Brett, I can't do what you're going to ask me to do today. I can't move my arms or my legs. I'm exhausted. And he looked at the door as if to say, well, you can go home. And then he looked at me and he said, find a way. And in that moment, I realized that all I can do is the best that I can with what I have and try and find a way, try and get it done. So in that moment was born this idea that even though things seem impossible, like, just show up, lean in, and do the best that you can with what you have. And it was brilliant because every single day he was giving me something that seemed impossible, like truly impossible. Every single day I just did the best that I could with what I had to try and find a way through it. And every day I proved to myself that what seems impossible is really possible. And that was a gift in the insanity of the training that he was giving me. But that was a very long answer, Erica, to where finding a way came. But basically, so this book is all about, we all are faced with insurmountable or challenges that seem insurmountable. We also, all inside of us, have dreams that seem impossible. And what this book is all about is me going back into my life and looking at, well, how did I do that? How did I become a world champion not being able to swim 8 years earlier? How did I overcome, anxiety and fear and OCD to the levels that I wanted to die? How did I get through that? Because I'm still here. I survived it. And I know that each and every one of you can look at things in your life, challenges where you thought, I'm never going to get through this. I'm devastated. But look, you survived it. Or you achieved something that at one point seemed impossible. And so this is going back and figuring out how I found my way. What were the questions I asked myself? What did I need to lead with? How did I move through that? And it's me guiding the reader to a deep dive into themselves, into what drives you, what matters most to you, what's getting in the way. Let's figure that out together.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so I think everybody listening could either you're in the moment or you've been in the moment where you're like, I feel absolutely stuck right here, right now. I have this vision of where I want to go, or at least an idea where I want to go, but what's the next step? And so now really and I know Tony Robbins, your mentor, your guy, my guy, like he talks about this all the time, is closing that gap. If it's like this vision, you're here now, that's your vision. How do we close the gap? And so what is the first step you help guide people to? Like, what's the first step in gaining clarity? Possibly if you don't even know exactly where you want to go, but at least having enough drive and vision to take that step towards something that you're going after.
I think the first step is really getting to know yourself. Who are you? What matters most to you? What do you value most in life? What are the things that make you feel alive? And even going to the point of asking yourself, like at the end of your life, what will have mattered most to you? Is it really going to be how many social media followers you had or how much money you made? Or is it going to be having made a difference in the world or having loved with all your heart? Like, what are those things? Let's figure out who you are, minus the stories you've been told about who you are. But who are you really, and what lights you up? And then the most important step of all is understanding that you get to go first in deciding what story in life you want to live. So often we tell ourselves that we're powerless to change whatever situation we're in. And my belief and my knowing is that once you decide what life you want to live, then we can figure out, okay, who do you need to become in order to live that life? And what's getting in the way? What beliefs are getting in the way of you living that life? What patterns of thought and focus are getting in the way of that? And learning to love ourselves enough to show up every day focusing on what we have, what we love and want to create, what we have control over, so that every day, no matter what's happening around us, we can take one step closer to living the life we want to live versus continually taking one step further away. So going first means that it's all up to you. Life is up to us. What we focus on creates the energy that we have. The energy that we have determines how we show up in the world, the decisions we make, the actions we take, and ultimately our destiny. So a lot of us are unaware of the fact that maybe we're focusing on everything that's missing, everything that's wrong, our problems, everything we have no control over, yet we wonder why we just can't get out of our own way, why we're unhappy, why we're disappointed, why we're not achieving success. So I'm encouraging you to start looking into your own patterns of thoughts and focus so that you can better understand why life isn't what you would like it to be in this moment right now. It's taking ownership, and that feels like a big responsibility for people, right? It's like, oh my God, it's up to me. Like, that's a lot. Yeah. But the way I frame that is I feel more in control knowing it's up to me. And that, puts me in the driver's seat where I feel more in control. And therefore, once I realized that life was up to me and it wasn't up to like luck or, whatever, all these other things that I have no control over, once I understood that, that is actually what freed me from my anxiety and my OCD back in college.
I totally agree. I think it's the most empowering thing. It does seem overwhelming, but the way, as you stated, to reframe it is that now that means I'm in control of creating the results. So what do I need to do? What actions every day that do I need to take? And your story in every which way, we'll unpack a lot of it. But for example, you getting into being a triathlete, you started not even knowing how to swim, which is absolutely remarkable. And then having the vision to be a world triathlete winner, and you made it, and you made it twice. And you retired as the top world triathlete, not even knowing how to swim when you started. And so what's remarkable about that, which I want to ask you, is how do you go from not being good in something per se, and then actually having that vision that I have the potential to be a world champion? How do you turn that doubt of, something that you don't see any proof of yet? How do you turn that doubt into belief that it is possible?
Well, I love that question. There's a lot of different parts to this. I think number one, it needs to be something that really matters to you. Like there was a reason why I had to do that. And that's a story in itself. And I want to answer your question in particular. But so if it matters, if there's a reason why, like for me at that point in time in my life, I was on a desperate mission to prove to myself that because I had just realized I was gay, to prove to myself that even as a gay woman, I could achieve something that I thought was special, that I could find a love and a respect for myself and a worthiness from within. So I'd just been rejected by my dad when he found out about who I was. And that left me feeling like, my God, like if I'm not worthy of love, how can I live this next day? Like if I'm never going to find love, if I'm never going to find a love for myself, if I'm never going to be successful because of who I am. So when I found triathlon, I guess I just knew that this was going to be the vehicle through which I could find a respect for myself, number one, a trust in myself, and hopefully a love for myself ultimately. But I didn't know how to swim. And I did my first race and I came in dead last. And I was laughed at and I was yelled at because I was getting in people's way. You would have thought it would be something that would make me never want to go near a triathlon ever again. But the thing is that when I was in it, it felt so good to be backing myself, to be doing something that I really wanted to do, even though I sucked at it. And that made me feel really alive. But here's where story comes in. And I want you all, as you're listening, to think about something in your life that you really wanted to do. You so wanted to do it. It looked so fun, but you thought, you know what? I don't know how to do any of the things involved in that, so I guess that's not for me. And you said no to it. So you never even gave yourself a chance. After that first race where I come in dead last, I could have told myself the story that, I'm 23 years old. That's old to start a sport like this. I don't know how to swim. I just came in dead last and got laughed at and yelled at. Triathlon must not be for me. And I could have given up and my life would be totally different. But I wasn't willing to live that story because on that day I felt so alive and so inspired and so proud of myself that I had to tell myself a different story, not lying to myself, but pulling out facts that made it seem possible for me. Like, hey, I was a 3-sport athlete in college, field hockey, ice hockey, and lacrosse. I've got tremendous work ethic. I'm willing to fall on my face and fail, but never give up. And there's a really important reason why I need to do this for me. So for all those reasons, and I've got this passion for this sport, for all those reasons, one day maybe I can become a world champion. So how can you tell yourself the truth in a situation like that when there's something you want to do? I want to own my own business, but I'm not a business person. I never have. Okay, but what truths about you could make that possible? Maybe, you've got great work ethic. You're wonderful with people. You love connecting with people. You've got great passion. All those things will make it possible. So as we change the story, as I changed the story to, hey, one day I'm going to become a world champion in this sport because I've got the work ethic, the athleticism, the desire, all of this. Now, in that moment, did I truly believe that I could become a world champion? No, of course not. That's ridiculous. I just came in dead last in a little town race. But I needed to become the person that could become a world champion today. What would future me, the future me that's going to become a world champion, what actions would she take today? I got myself a coach. I learned how to swim. I read every single book and magazine about the sport. I started training like a professional triathlete would, 5 hours a day, even though I sucked. What would she know? What would future me, the one that's going to become a world champion, what would she know about what she's doing every single day? She would know that every day when she shows up and she leans in and she gets the work done, that she's taking one step closer to getting where she wants to go. What would she believe? Future me, what would she believe about her, ability to one day achieve her dream? She would believe that if she just shows up every day and if she leaves no stone unturned, that she's going to make the progress and maybe one day she'll become that person. So who do you need to become? Like, what would future you, the one that can do this thing that you dream of doing, show up as her every single day? Show up as him every single day. Show up as a person you want to be. So basically in that, every day I'm showing up, I'm training 4 or 5 hours a day. I have a coach. I'm learning how to swim. I'm, training before work at 4 a.m. I'm training during my lunch hour. I'm training after work and I go to bed and I do it again the next day. And eventually 8 years later, I became a world champion, which means that the impossible is really possible if you decide to show up and be the person that you need to be to make this happen. Now, part of that was redefining success and failure, because obviously I was going to fail a lot. I was going to embarrass myself a lot. I was going to fail a lot. So I had to look at, success for me was progress. If every day I was just a tiny bit better, if I didn't fall as hard on my face as I did the day before, that was progress and that was success for me. And if I failed, that was learning. And I thought when I fail, I learn. When I learn, I grow. When I grow, I make progress. And that's what's going to get me where I want to go. So the brilliance in this at the time was that, success breeds success.
Absolutely.
But if we're making success being, coming in first place, you're not going to get momentum there. But if success is just progress, being better than you were the day before, then every day you're experiencing success. And in that, you build momentum. So that was kind of how it all happened. But it's a big investment. You need to invest by changing the story that you tell and then becoming the person you need to become to achieve what you want to achieve. And we all can do that.
Yeah, I love that exercise of envisioning the person that you wish to become and then, dissecting it. Like, what does that person feel? If that person, let's say a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, what do they feel? What do they do? How do they start their day? What actions are they taking? What is their structure of their schedule? Like, you have to dissect it, and then you have to be that every day. And I love that because it's once you understand like the feeling, the actions, then at least you could at least take responsibility and be like, am I showing up as that person that could have that? And it's very black and white, really, because you very much know, like for example, somebody that is fit and healthy, what are they doing? They have a workout plan. At least they work out, 4 or 5 days a week. They eat clean. There's a system in place so they could be that person, right? So I think it's such a great process that I think even if you just, what is your vision of who you want to be? And then dissect it. Like, what are the actions? What's the feeling? All those things. So
Totally.
I think that is so helpful. So helpful.
And one little thing to add to that, because it's so important, is what would that person be focusing on? Because again, that's a huge part of this. Like that person that's fit and healthy, are they focusing on, or that's not a great example, but how about like the guy that wants to become a CEO of his company? Is he focusing on how far he has to go, which would lead him to feeling so discouraged, or how far he's come? The person that's fit and healthy, how are they defining working out? Because if they're definitely not saying working out so hard, working right. out is this big effort. They're focusing on, wow, working out gives me energy. Working out, is life-giving. And they're giving it a meaning that empowers them and makes them want to do it versus not. So all these little distinctions need to be made. But when you do that, suddenly you see yourself moving towards what you want at such a quicker rate and enjoying the process at the same time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So in your book, Into Finding Way Through Any Challenges, you talk about the power lines, and you have, I don't know, I'm guessing there's like 10 of them, but let's go into some of them. And I guess the first one I'm thinking of right now is the power of intention. And this kind of goes into what we're kind of talking about, but can you go into the power of intention and why this is significant?
Yeah. And thank you for bringing that up, because the power line to me is basically the powers that if we tap into these things, they are the things that will help us move through any challenge. And the power of intention, you're exactly right. It has to do with everything we're just talking about. When we can think about every single moment of our day, and if we go into these moments with intention, we can actually create the experience that we want. So let's take working out, for example. Maybe there's someone listening that doesn't like to work out, but you know that you need to because it's good for your health. What I recommend is saying, okay, in this workout, like, what do you want to experience? Do you want it to be miserable? No, of course not. Maybe you want to experience, you want to love it, and you want it, to fill you up with energy. So you become intentional about what you want. And then the next question is, well, how do you need to show up then? In order to create that experience where it fills you up with energy and you enjoy it, how do you need to show up? Well, instead of dreading it or focusing on how hard it's going to be or how long it has to be, let's focus on the fact that what you know about exercise is when you do it, it always gives you energy for your day. It always makes you feel strong. It always makes you feel confident. So you go in appreciating the fact that this workout is going to give you so much. During the workout, are you going to focus on how far you have to go? Oh my God, I did 1 minute. I have 29 more minutes to go. No, if you want to have a great experience, you're going to just be focusing on every single step. You're going to stay present in the moment. You're going to feel gratitude for having 2 arms and 2 legs and a strong heart that allows you to work out. So you set yourself up by saying, okay, if this is what I want to experience, then this is how I need to show up. Again, you're responsible. So in that, with everything, even relationships, it can be transformed with intentionality. Your road to success can be that much quicker with intentionality. So in the power of intention, I mean, think about this, Erica, where in your life, maybe we'll use you as an example, like after reading that chapter, what did it make you think of? And did you bring that perspective into anything in your life after reading it?
Absolutely. I mean, actually, one of my most favorite words is intention, because I believe intention is where you are conscious in your day, like conscious in your actions, you're conscious in your decisions. So I always like to remind myself, like being very intentional in what I'm doing, like even having this interview, preparing for it, putting thought into it, not just like jumping in like, hey, Siri, let's have a conversation, So I believe having intention in everything. So I just like to return to that, like even in my relationships, honestly, being intentional in my relationships, like making sure it is in alignment with what feels right to me, like in my soul. So it's just a friendly reminder of the power of intention, because I've always believed that. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I think it is one of those things that really gets you so clear on your path.
Yeah. And so let's talk about relationships, because a lot of us have family situations on holidays where it's like, oh God, the holidays and the whole family's coming together. In that, you're actually creating an expectation that the holiday with your family is going to be this horrible, painful thing that you have to get through. It doesn't have to be that way. Again, like if that's your expectation, how are you going to show up? You're going to show up kind of like, closed and like anticipating the pain and anticipating the arguments. And in that, you show up with an energy that actually, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It creates that. But so if we become intentional about, this Christmas, I'm going to have a wonderful time with my family. This is going to be like the best Christmas ever. Okay, well, in order to have that, how do you need to show up? Well, this time, rather than expecting the worst from everyone, I'm going to show up and I'm going to think about everything that I love about each person there. I'm going to meet each person, as their highest selves. I'm going to think about, everything I love about each person. I'm going to meet them there. I'm going to be focusing on that. Think about how that person's energy is so different when they show up at this dinner, because they're open and they're looking for the good in everyone. They're anticipating wonderful conversations, changes the energy of the whole thing. So when we use intentionality, I mean, number one, like you say, Erica, you connect with you. What do I want? What's important to me? What do I want to come out of this interview or this dinner? Okay, well, in that, then I need to own my part in this. I'm going to prepare, or I'm going to come in with this kind of energy. In that, you shift the entire experience. So it's so incredibly important, and especially when you're trying to achieve a goal, or especially when you are trying to move through a challenge. Intentionality as far as when you're in a dark place. you want to get out. Well, then, okay. I know that if I'm in a dark place, I simply cannot afford to focus on everything that's wrong, all my problems, everything I have no control over, because if I'm focusing on all of that, I am not going to move out of this dark space. Yeah. So I need to be intentional about, what? I'm in this dark space. So right now, if I want to get out of this, I need to start finding something I can appreciate. What can I appreciate? What can I be grateful for? What's good? What can I control? And go do those things. And suddenly you start lifting yourself. You become the first responder for your own suffering by being intentional about what you must focus on instead in order to move out of the place you don't want to be in.
Absolutely. So powerful. I love it. I love it. Let's go into a couple more power lines. Let's see which other ones we could dive into. So I know resilience is a very powerful one and a very important one in finding a way. So can you go into resilience a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, resilience, I think, is everything. And I love going back and thinking about like little kids, not even kids, babies that are trying to learn how to walk. And they're falling over, they're hitting their head, they're hitting their elbow, but they keep trying, right? And as parents, not that I'm a parent, but I imagine like they're not saying, oh my God, she keeps falling down, forget it. Like she's never going to be able to do it. But instead, like every time the baby tries again and maybe takes, half a step instead of no step at all, it's like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. And this encourages the baby to continue trying until eventually they're walking and then running. And then it's, but as we get older, we somehow believe that we should be good at things right away. Like things should be smooth. And sometimes if it's not smooth and if we're not good at it, we don't even try at all. We don't keep going. So there's resilience in that respect. Like be okay going back to square one, falling on your face, getting back up again like you did as a baby until you're able to be good at it. But resilience is never giving up. It's never giving in. It is, kind of connecting to the fact that when you're going through something hard, it's the moving through it. It's going beyond it where there's, this becoming. You're becoming more. You're getting stronger. You're bringing something new into your life at that point. But we can build resilience. And I'll use an example as an athlete training in my coach Brett's squad. And I'll never forget, I was in the middle of a swim and he came over to me and he said, go harder. You need to go harder. And I said, but I can't go any harder than I'm going now. But he walked away and he was really pissed off because he's telling me to go harder and I'm telling him I can't. But I started thinking, well, maybe I can go harder. Like maybe I'll just try for like 5 seconds to make it even more painful than it is now. So I did that. I did 5 seconds where I swam harder than I ever had. It felt more pain than I ever had. And I survived it. So it's like, oh, okay, well, I survived that. So maybe the next time I'm going to go 10 seconds in that really uncomfortable space. It's like kind of removing the governor switch. We all have a governor switch. When we get uncomfortable, the governor switch goes off and says no more. So I'm going to back off. I'm going to stop working out. My session stops now. It's way too uncomfortable. And we back away. Building resilience, you need to remove the governor switch and you need to start building confidence by kind of putting your toe in the water and like for me, building it to, 15 seconds where I go to this level of pain. Eventually what happens is you break through that previous threshold and you reach a whole new level. And this is how you become better in athletics. This is how you become, better at being vulnerable by being a little more vulnerable every single day with your partner until eventually you're going deep and your relationship has reached a whole new level. So resilience requires you to get so uncomfortable, and it requires you to ask for more. It requires you to take one more step. It requires you to trust in yourself enough to take that extra step into something that is so uncomfortable, knowing that when you do that, you are taking everything, your strength, your resilience to the next level. And then when it's time to face a really big challenge, guess what? You have everything that you need to know and to trust that you're going to find a way through it.
And that's so necessary to turn the impossible to possible, is continuing to rise over every challenge that you endure. And one of the ones I love that you talk about is, and I think this is really important because your story of going through your cancer and surviving that, everybody, by the way, obviously, which is remarkable. The story of everything you endured, and this was during COVID, am I correct? 2020?
Yeah.
So you talk about the power of forgiveness. And I think the power of forgiveness, I think, is a really, really important one, because I think so many of us hold on to this weight that they haven't realized they're holding on to, all the things, the people that have done them wrong, the mistakes they've done wrong that they've yet forgiven themselves of. And so I think this is really what stops people from going to the next level, is holding on to those things that really limit them and weigh them down. So what can you say about the power of forgiveness, and how has that served you in your life tremendously?
Wow. I mean, it's so important. And actually, this all occurred to me when I got that diagnosis, and it was a horrible diagnosis. And I started wondering, like, how could, an athlete and someone that takes such good care of herself, like, how could she get acute myeloid leukemia? How could this happen? And it got me to thinking about dis-ease, dis-ease. And I had, for so long in my life, had such deep anxiety and fear and, all these things. And I would hold on to, pain when someone hurt me. Like, I would just let it rip me apart from the inside out, and things that I felt guilty about. And I thought to myself, if I'm going to survive this, I need to do my part in basically sweeping out my soul, all the things that could be causing dis-ease inside of me. And that meant forgiving people, even if it was just energetically forgiving people for pain they may have caused me. But even more importantly, forgiving myself for things that I had done. And they weren't even like these horrible things, but they were things that I really hammered myself over. And so in that, I started reflecting on, when we've forgiven people, like, so my father, for example, when he found out I was gay, he cut me out of his life. And that was devastating to me, because he was my best friend. He was my greatest source of love. It was devastating. But 2 years later, he started trying to call me. Every time he called me, I would rip him to bits. Oh my God, you have just ruined my life. You broke my heart. And I would just purge all my anger, all my resentment. And eventually he stopped calling. I mean, you wouldn't want to call me, Erica, if every time you called me, I just ripped you to bits. So it occurred to me, and actually, let me take a step back, because when we started rescuing horses, these horses have been abused and neglected and so let down by humans. But within a week of us being consistent with feeding them and loving on them and giving them the medical care they need and speaking to them kindly and softly, within a week, they forgive humans. They forgive humans. We don't do that. Like, we hold on. Somebody hurts us and we'll hold on to it for a lifetime. And what we don't realize is that when we do that, that anger and that resentment, it keeps us from joy, from love, from success, because we have an excuse. We have an excuse as to why we can't have a successful relationship. We have an excuse as to why we're not happy. We have an excuse as to why we haven't achieved to the levels that we want to. So when we have that blame and that pain, it's actually holding us back from everything that we want in our lives. So in witnessing these horses and how they forgive humans, because when we first started rescuing, we thought, oh, they're going to be traumatized, forever. We're just going to have to keep them safe. No, they forgive humans, and then they experience joy and they love us. And it just becomes this beautiful example of what's possible when we forgive. So in that, with my father, I realized, and this is thanks to Tony Robbins, saying if you're going to blame the people that have hurt you for all the bad in your life, you also need to blame them for all the good. Right. And when I look back at, what inspired me to want to take on this impossible dream of becoming a world champion triathlete when I didn't know how to swim, that was because of what happened with him. Like his rejection gave birth inside of me to this hunger, to this determination, to this desire to want to do whatever it took to achieve this impossible dream so that I could find a love and a worthiness from within. Yeah. Now, if he hadn't done that, if he'd said, oh, you're going to be such a wonderful gay woman. What would that have done for me? What would I be doing in my life now? So everyone listening, think about that person that has hurt you. Think about that person and what happened. Who wouldn't you be today if that hadn't happened? So true. Maybe even look at what are your greatest strengths? What are your greatest strengths? Were those strengths born in that situation? Were those strengths a requirement to build after that pain, after that hurt? Because would you be who you are today if it wasn't for that person and what happened? Number one. So in that, there was this realization that he was exactly who I needed him to be, to become who I am today. And when I forgave my father, and this isn't a promise, forgiveness is for you. Okay. So when you forgive that person that hurt you, you become free of the shackles that hold you back from everything that you want in life. So forgiveness is for you. But I got my father back. Like he wanted to be a part of my life. And I realized too that in that I needed to forgive myself. And when we look at the things that we've done that we feel bad about and that we haven't forgiven ourselves for, what I encourage you to look at is the fact that you did the best that you could with what you knew at the time, with the information you had at the time, with the skills and the tools that you had at the time. You did the best that you could with what you had. And I want you to have the same compassion for yourself that you would have for someone that you love that is feeling bad about something they did, where you'd say, you did the best that you could. You didn't have the tools that you have now. Now that you know better, you do better. Mm-hmm. It is so important and so for me, as I got diagnosed, I knew that I had to reconcile these things. I knew that I needed to forgive myself and have compassion for myself and really look at the truth that, yes, I did those things then, but I didn't know what I knew now. I didn't have the tools to deal with it in any other way than I did then. But now that I know better, I have proof that I do better in my life in every other area. So it's doing the same thing for yourself. The same thing that I did at that point in my diagnosis was I wanted to remove any dis-ease so that I could make space for the healing to move through me. So I that was a long way of explaining, Erica. I hope that was helpful. But
so it's so important because I do think that is something that I talk about this with others as well. Like to get to self-love, there are many facets, right? But one of the things that I always like to say is I feel like self-acceptance is a pathway to self-love, because I think so many of us have not forgiven ourselves for the mistakes, the things we did wrong, the decisions we made, or whatever got in our way. And we hold on to this and we never let go and released and made space or room for the next level, the next evolution of ourselves. And I believe this is the pathway to achieving our results or achieving ultimately self-love, self-worth, self-acceptance, is releasing these things that are weighing us down. So that's why I think the power of forgiveness is so critical. And also, I mean, I truly believe, my belief is that's part of the reason why you were able to heal your body. And so that's why I want people to hear this. And I love that you share, like, we did the best we could for what we knew. Like, I've messed up so much in relationships, and I take responsibility for my part because I was a player in the relationship, you know? So I realized, like, I need to forgive myself for what I did wrong, because I really did the best I could for what I knew in the position I was at, in the mindset I was, you know? So I want people to really hear that. So thank you for drilling that home.
Well, I love it is so crucial. It's so important. And I love what you're saying about self-acceptance to self-love, because I agree with you 1,000,000%. And let's go back to intention and say, let's be intentional about really showing up for ourselves every day. So as you're listening to this, like, if there's something that you need to forgive yourself for, let's be intentional about doing that. And then let's be intentional about every single day showing up for yourself and following through for yourself. You know how we all make promises to everyone around us and we show up for them, and the last person that, you know, we'll show up for is ourselves sometimes. And to get that self-love and that self-acceptance, you know, think about what it takes to love someone else. We love people that show up for us. We love people that follow through with their promises. We love people that encourage us. So all those things that allow us to feel love, to love another, to feel loved by another, let's do those for ourselves. Because in that, there builds a relationship. And in that comes a self-acceptance that comes from, you know what, I made a promise to myself and I showed up. I always show up for myself. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And to really intentionally track that so that you're building up your proof that you can count on you. You're true to you. You tell yourself the truth. That's crucial too. Like, you know, the 4 agreements, one of them, be integrous with your word, which means, you know, like not only say the truth and follow through with your word, but tell yourself the truth in those moments where maybe you fell short in like perfection, you know, and you say, oh, you suck. Like, that's not being truthful. Look at yourself and say, wow, you gave 1,000,000% effort and I'm so proud of you. And you did a really good job. Like, be truthful, be integrous with your word to yourself, because in all these little things, treating yourself as you would treat someone you love so much, you build that trust in yourself, you deepen that relationship with you. And from there, it's so much easier to access self-acceptance and self-love, because you're showing up for yourself like you would for other people in your life. I don't know why I got on that, or it must have been something that mattered, but anyways.
No, I mean, you and I love talking about, I know your journey, as you spoke about, has really cultivating that self-love, self-worthiness, and returning home to yourself, meaning connecting with your authentic self. And I love talking about this because that has been very much my journey in realizing, like, so much of what I thought that I was worthy, like I felt I was worthy and I love myself, ended up being a facade, and I really didn't authentically feel that. And so I know that you and I are very passionate about talking about that journey and cultivating these things that actually give us the foundation to build on one another. One thing I love to talk about, and I think this is so important, and of course, Tony Robbins talks about this, that our decision is what shapes our destiny. And I don't know if it was, I definitely got this from Tony Robbins. I'm sure a lot of people listening right now are Tony Robbins fans, as we are. He talks about the power of decision. And this is one thing that's really stuck with me, because I realize, especially for ambitious people, when we decide to do something, it's like a fire has been lit and like you can't blow it out. And so I really would love if you could talk about, this is one of your power lines, the power of decision, and how powerful it is. Because I feel like even when I started this podcast, the journey to start it, it's like that moment I decided, I'm like, I can't back down. Now I've said I'm going to do it, so I'm going to do it. And then I stuck with it. And, you know, again, it's being accountable with my word. But can you talk on the power of decision a little bit, because I think this is really what will set people up after listening to this interview to take action.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Let's start, Erica, with the decisions that we make a million times a day, the decision of what to focus on, right? I mean, that in itself can take you, to all things good or all things bad. And again, back to, and I'll repeat it just because it's so important, like decisions on what are you going to focus on in this moment? Are you going to focus on everything that's wrong, or are you going to focus on everything that's right? Because you can see where both those things are going. Are you going to focus on how far you have to go and discourage yourself? Or are you going to focus on how far you've come and be encouraged? So those tiny decisions that we make all day long change the trajectory of our lives. So even though I say they're tiny decisions, they're actually some of the biggest decisions that we make, because as they add up, that's creating our experience in life. But then it's the decisions like, and I'll use a big one, it was when I was given the diagnosis and I'm being told I have like a 5% chance of surviving this. I made the decision in that moment that this is not my time to go. I am going to survive and I'm going to thrive on the other side. Now, even though I didn't believe it in that moment, because my life's falling apart, I'm terrified, I'm devastated, I couldn't afford to make any other decision but that. Because here's the thing. In making that decision that I'm going to survive, that determined how I was going to show up, what I was going to focus on, the actions I was going to take, and again, it comes down to story too. Like I could have told myself the story, this is the end. And how would I have shown up? Exactly. If I believed that this was the end, I'd probably just be like, okay, well, gosh, let's just spend time together. Let me enjoy the things that, I can, and let's just get ready to die. Like that would not set me up to surviving. But when I say like, I'm going to survive and I'm going to thrive on the other side, suddenly I show up ready to fight. Okay, what do I need to do? Let me figure out, what are the best treatments? What actions do I need to take? What habits and rituals do I need to put in place so that I'm showing up as my best self, so I leave no stone unturned? In making that decision, I showed up in a way that was going to give me every chance of being able to survive. So the decisions that we make determine how we show up, which then, of course, determine the direction our lives take. Now, decisions on what meaning to give things, right? I mean, again, I could have said this is the end, or this is the meaning that I gave this diagnosis. I always have had this belief that when you're going through a hard time, what you're going through now is preparing you for what you asked for. Think about that. What you're going through now is preparing you for what you asked for. So when you're going through a challenge, is that challenge actually giving you something or sharpening a tool that you have that is necessary for you to achieve that impossible dream? Now, for me, right before my diagnosis, I had reached a point in my life where for the first time in my life, I felt I had found the freedom that I'd been searching for a lifetime. The freedom to be all of who I am. I found the love of my life. I'm living my purpose. I'm living my mission. And in finding that freedom, after having searched for it for a lifetime, I felt this just such a powerful desire to want to help others find theirs, to want to bring, show my gratitude by touching as many lives as I could in a way that helps them find what I had found. And I would pray for it every day. I'd say, God, I hope there's a way that I can give back and show my gratitude for having been able to find this place that I've yearned for a lifetime. So when I got diagnosed, I thought, okay, what I'm going through now is preparing me for what I asked for. I want to be able to help others. I want to be able to help people find their healing, their freedom. Maybe The lessons I learn in fighting this, who I become in overcoming this, will be exactly all the things that I need in order to have that impact that I dream of having. Now, just in giving it that meaning, it took me away from feeling like a victim, feeling like someone that, how could this happen to me, to being empowered. Like, okay, so let's beat this. Where are the lessons? What am I meant to learn here? And there were so many things that I learned. I learned that, like, and I'm sure you're this way too, I was a giver, giving until I had nothing left to give. Cancer gives you no choice. It brought me to my knees. I couldn't do anything for myself. I needed to learn how to receive. And in receiving, what that's given me is this much greater capacity to give at all new levels. Just like breathing, you breathe in, you breathe out. Like, you can't have one without the other. You'll die. It's the same with giving and receiving. When you give and you can receive, then you have this endless source to give to the people that you love and care about. But all the gifts, the gifts of knowing, I actually, up until getting sick, believed, and this is going to resonate with a lot of people who are probably maybe still there. I believed that the people that were in my life and that loved me because I was an achiever. I inspired them. I was always giving. I could always come in and, make a difference or help them or solve a problem. I was never a worry. I was never a problem. And I never needed anything from anyone. And I believe that that's why my wife loved me. That's why my mom loved me. That's why I had the friends that I had. So I actually believed, Erica, that when I got sick, that I would lose everyone because I could no longer inspire. I could no longer achieve. I was the biggest problem in the world. I was the biggest worry in the world. Couldn't do anything for myself. But guess what? No one left.
Yeah.
They seemed to love me more than they ever had before. And what I realized for the first time in 50 years is that I'm loved for my heart. I'm loved for my spirit. I'm loved for my soul. I'm loved for my passion for life. And guess what? So are all of you. You're not loved for the work that you do. You're not loved for the money you have. You're not loved for all the things you can do for another person. You're loved for your heart. You're loved for your soul, your spirit. That's why people love you. It took me 50 years to understand that truth. So I know I've gotten off track here, but Anyway.
No, that message alone is gold that I think a lot of people need to hear, because I do know that was your journey. And I remember you sharing this in your book. The book is so good. Everybody get it. Finding Your Way, Turning the Impossible to Possible. It will be in the show notes, like I said. But I remember you sharing this story, and it touched my heart, because I think a lot of people experience that their identity is tied to something. And they think that's their everything. That's the reason why they exist. That's their purpose. That's what makes them worthy. And you are a perfect example of coming to the realization that just because you've accomplished all these things, that's a part of you. That's a piece of your puzzle. And your soul, your spirit, your energy of life you bring to everybody is what makes you worthy and loved. And I think everybody needs to hear that, So thank you for that. So I want to honor your time. So I have 2 questions. First, I'm going to ask you, okay, I guess if you could sum this up, because I want to make sure I have the closing question. But one thing, you've shared so many lessons, and you talk about learning all the lessons and being able to reflect on them and take those so you could, use that as a strength for the next version of you. One thing I love is that you explain in the book beautifully is your passion for horses and what they've taught you. Your sweet Savannah, that was your first horse. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you share what horses teach us. And I love this beautiful lesson that we can learn from horses. And we were talking about this offline of the therapy that horses could put us through. And can you explain what horses teach us? I guess if you could summarize that.
Wow. I mean, and but keep in mind, like when I rescued Savannah, I had never had a horse before. I knew nothing about horses. So this was all new to me. And all I saw was this huge, powerful beast that I had just rescued. And I was terrified, kind of. But what I realized very quickly is that horses are our mirrors, and horses meet us exactly where we're at. So in the beginning, and I'll make and we run programs, every other weekend. And we'll be starting those soon because of the power of these beautiful healers. And one of, I believe, their most profound healing powers is to be our mirrors. So for example, I'll keep it very simple. If you show up and you're anxious, like you can't fool a horse. You can come and you can pretend like, oh, I'm all cool, but inside your heart's racing and you're anxious. It's going to be reflected by them. They're going to be on edge. They're going to have the whites of their eyes, out. They're going to be anticipating danger. So you wonder, like people will say, well, why isn't she coming over to me? And I said, well, how do you feel right now? Fine. And you can tell they're anxious. And it's like, no, really, how are you feeling? And I guess I'm a little bit nervous. And what I explained to them is that a horse, that number one, they can feel your heart beating from 4 feet away. They can feel the beating of your heart. So as you show up with anxiety, they feel that anxiety, and what they're thinking about is there must be a mountain lion around or a bear or some kind of a danger. So I'm on high alert and I'm ready to run. Now, what they also show us, there's so many lessons that these horses show us, but they know better where we are in every moment than we do. And I'll give you a little example. I came home from the hospital. I've been in hospital. It was like 2 months of being away from home. And I had lost tremendous amount of weight. I was like super skinny, very weak. And I got home and all I wanted to do was ride my horse, Savannah. And you can see her up here, Erica, beautiful, behind me. She's powerful and strong. And, before I got sick, I'd get on her. And before I even had my foot in the stirrup, she'd like take off. So I tell my wife, I'm going to ride Savannah. And she says, you are not riding Savannah. You've just been fighting for your life and you're still here. Like, I'm not going to let you get on her and die. Anyhow, I got on Savannah, and it's springtime. The grass was like 2 feet high, and horses love, they'll reach down, they'll eat the grass. I get on her. She doesn't reach down for the grass, sitting on her. And when I ask her to move, she just takes these tiny little steps like this. She was basically knew exactly where I was at in my journey. I was weak. I needed to be protected. I needed to be safe. As the weeks went on and I kept getting on her, it's kind of the same thing, but then the steps got a little bigger. And it was about 8 months after my transplant that I got the call that I was cancer free. And I wanted to go ride Savannah and celebrate. So I go outside, I get in the saddle. And when I get in, she starts moving before I have my feet in the stirrups. And then she starts like trotting before I'm even ready. And that was her way of saying, Mom, you're no longer sick. Okay. We can no longer, go through life as, vulnerable and, a patient and sick. It's time for you to start living again. So the whole journey, she was guiding me from where I was, knowing what I needed at that point and showing me where I needed to be, and so all these things. But horses care only about 3 things. And one of them is that they can be safe. They're not going to be eaten. The other one is that they'll have food and water. And the other one is that they know who the leader is. So if you think about this, you think about kids that are lacking confidence or, don't feel like they belong. and they show up and they meet a horse for the first time, and it's like this big, powerful beast. And what they realize is that because I always ask, the horse needs to know that you're their leader. So even though you may be 4 feet tall and they're, 6 feet tall, like, you and your energy will let them know that you can take care of them and you can be their leader. And in that, they'll do anything you want. They just want to know they have a leader. For a horse, it's great. Once they know they have a leader, they calm down. And so imagine this, teenager that has no confidence, that doesn't feel like they belong. And suddenly they're the leader to an animal that looks like this. And that's building the confidence. And it's also like horses will respond to our energy. So how are you showing up in your life? Are you struggling as a boss in your job? Like, are you having a hard time connecting to the people that work for you? Like, how are you showing up? You'll see people like go up to the horse and try and quickly touch their face and, talk to them loudly. And the horse wants nothing to do with that. So what we'll say is, hey, change your approach. Why don't you do it differently? What can you do differently? Maybe show up, a little more slowly and don't touch them right away. Like, connect first, maybe speak a little softly. And suddenly the horse responds and comes over and lets him touch them. So what we're learning is different, like how we're showing up and the consequences of that, and how we can show up differently to get a different response. So we then bring that into our lives and it shifts everything.
It's so remarkable. I love it. Okay. I'm going to ask you my closing question. And then I want, if you could just share, where could people possibly train with your horses, what's coming up and all the things. So final question, if you were to share a piece of wisdom, a life lesson you learned along your journey, and you just feel that it's everything that everybody needs to hear right now, what would that piece of wisdom be? I know you've already shared so much, but a closing thought.
Would say, be you. Be fearlessly, authentically you. And that means not caring about what certain people will think about you as your authentic self, or what you may miss out on if you're you, or just be fearlessly, authentically you. I'm here as an example. I've been there. I've been something that I wasn't, to try and fit in, to try and, earn people's love. And what I realize is, at the moment that I decided to just be me, everything in my life shifted. I found the love of my life. I was able to tap into my highest potential. I was able to find joy and fulfillment in my life. So let me, spare you the time and tell you right now, just be you. And if you don't know who that is, it's time to get on and read this book, and let me help you find out who that really is. But what makes you feel alive? What matters most? You bring all of who you are into this life, and you will set yourself up to truly have the life that you deserve. That would be my one piece of advice.
Absolutely. Mic drop. Absolutely. I can't begin to reiterate that truth. That's the key to everything. And I completely, with all my heart, believe that. So thank you for that message. Okay. So I want to know, can we share, you have an event coming up you have an event coming up in July in Los Angeles that's going to be for your book launch. And then also you speak on the stages of Tony Robbins, UPW, Date with Destiny often. Is there anything coming up soon? So can you share a little bit about those two?
Yes. Well, first of all, I would love for you to join me in LA. It's Thursday, July 27th at the Grove, where I spent endless hours when I lived in LA, reading books at the Barnes and Noble there. I would love to see you there. I'm going to be signing books, reading a bit, having a discussion. You'll see me at all of Tony's events. It's the ultimate privilege to do that. And also, if you follow me on Instagram at Siri Lindley, also Twitter and Facebook, and Believe Ranch and Rescue, which is our nonprofit at Believe Ranch and Rescue, we're always talking about events that we're going to be running that you can be a part of, equine assisted healing events. please come and join us for those. I would love, Erica, to offer, people can get a free downloaded chapter if they text "Go First" to 66866. You will be sent a chapter of the book that you can download. And I'd love for you to see that, but I would also love for you to order your book. $1 of every book goes to Feeding America. Tony Robbins is going to match that. So $2 from every book goes to Feeding America. And pretty much the rest of it is going to be going to Saving Horses. So that's a great reason to get it. But I think once you do get it, it's going to be a worthwhile gift that you give yourself. And Erica, I just want to thank you. You are such an extraordinary soul. I just adore you. And I thank you for bringing me here to speak with you and your listeners. And I know that we're going to be doing this a lot in the future, whether you on my podcast or me on yours, but I thank you. You're just an amazing person.
Thank you so, so much. I received that and I feel exactly the same way to you. And I'm just so honored to hold this space again and to have you back on the show. And I'm excited to celebrate this book launch. Everybody, like I said, this is a life-changing book. And I promise you this, I already read it. And there's lots of exercises that you could walk through to really empower yourself to take yourself to the next level that you see and wish for yourself. So thank you, Siri. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much, Erica. Thank you, everyone.